vpod.ai, your source for the latest information. This podcast is sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, hyper-converged in VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com or email your project requirements to sales@stonefly.com. You know, when we think about illegal trafficking, our mind usually jump to, well, the big stuff, right? Gold, drugs, maybe elephant ivory or rhino horn.
Absolutely. High value, often large-scale operations targeting well-known commodities or endangered species.
Exactly. But something really unusual caught my eye recently out of East Africa, specifically Kenya. Authorities there actually made arrests for smuggling. Well, ants.
Ants. You mean like insects, not some kind of code word?
No, actual ants. Thousands of them, apparently. It seems there were two separate incidents involving people trying to capture and transport these insects.
Wow, okay, that's
Good call.
unexpected. So not the usual multi-million-dollar rhino horn trade we hear about from that region.
Right. It seems like a completely different kind of operation. The reports suggest these ants were destined for markets in Europe and Asia. And get this, they weren't just being collected as a hobby. The potential value was estimated in the thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars for ants? Okay, you have my attention. This definitely points towards maybe a diversification in the illegal wildlife trade, moving beyond the big charismatic megafauna.
That's exactly what it looks like. You know, Kenya has been fighting trafficking of elephants and rhinos for years, a huge focus there. But this suggests the net is widening, or perhaps demand is shifting towards, well, smaller, less obvious targets.
So tell me about these incidents. You said there were two.
Yeah, two distinct cases. First, authorities arrested two Belgian teenagers. They're actually calling it wildlife piracy.
Wildlife piracy. For ants, that's a strong label.
It is, isn't it? Shows they're taking it seriously. These teenagers were apparently found with something like 5,000 ants in their accommodation.
5,000?
That's-
How are they keeping them?
In thousands of individual test tubes, packed with cotton wool. The officials believe this setup was designed to keep the ants alive for months, for transport, and obviously to conceal them. The teens apparently claimed it was an accident, but, well, the setup suggests otherwise.
Yeah, thousands of test tubes doesn't really scream accident. It sounds pretty organized, actually.
Oh.
And the second incident.
That was in Nairobi. A Kenyan man and a Vietnamese man were arrested. They had about 400 ants in their apartments, also facing charges for illegal trafficking.
Okay, so Belgians, a Kenyan, a Vietnamese national. This doesn't sound like just a couple of kids messing around. It suggests a more established network, maybe.
It could well do. It certainly points to an international demand driving this.
So what's the actual draw? Why ants? And are we talking about any specific kind of ant?
Ah, yes, good question. It seems to center on one particular species, Mesocephalates. It's commonly known as the giant African harvester ant.
Giant African harvester ant. Okay, the name gives a clue. Are they particularly big?
They are, relatively speaking, for ants. They can grow up to about 25 millimeters long, so pretty sizable. And they apparently have quite a striking appearance, too, bold coloration. They're native to East Africa.
And that's what makes them desirable, their size and look.
Seems so. Reports indicate these features make them sought after by collectors, particularly in Europe and Asia.
Collectors, so people keep them as, like, exotic pets.
Essentially, yes. There's this growing hobby where people keep ants in these specialized enclosures called formicariums.
Formicariums, like sophisticated ant farms.
Exactly, but much more advanced, designed for enthusiasts to really observe the ants, watch them establish colonies, forage, their whole complex social behavior. And these mesocephalotes are apparently quite interesting to watch.
Interesting. I mean, I can sort of see the appeal from a biological observation standpoint, but an illegal market? What kind of money are we actually talking about here?
Well, it fluctuates, obviously, but sources suggest a single one of these giant harvester ants could sell for between $130 and maybe $220.
Per ant. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And remember that batch the teenagers had? The Kenya Wildlife Service estimated its total value at around 1 million Kenyan shillings. That's roughly $700 US.
$7,700 for a batch of ants seized from teenagers. That's really something. It puts a whole new perspective on the value of wildlife, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It makes you wonder what else is out there being traded that we just don't think about.
So, okay, there's clearly money involved. But why is Kenya making such a big deal out of it? I mean, compared to elephant poaching, surely this is small scale. Is it really a major conservation concern?
That's a fair question, and it's something the authorities addressed. While one ant might seem tiny, their collective ecological role is apparently huge. These specific ants are protected under international biodiversity agreements.
Really? Why? What do they do?
Well, they're vital for the ecosystem's health. They play a key role in enriching the soil, kind of like tiny little plows turning it over. They also help disperse and germinate seeds for certain plants.
Okay, so ecosystem engineers on a small scale.
Precisely. And they're also a significant food source for various birds and other animals. So if you start removing thousands of them, you can imagine it might disrupt the local food web and soil health.
Right, that makes sense. It's that interconnectedness, isn't it? Pull one thread, even a small one, and the whole tapestry can be affected. Are there specific knock-on effects they're worried about, like specific plants or animals that rely heavily on them?
The sources don't detail specific species dependencies, but they emphasize that broader ecological impact. Plus, there's another angle: national sovereignty.
How so?
The Kenyan authorities basically argue that this is their natural biological resource. Smuggling them out undermines their control over their own biodiversity. It also means potential benefits, maybe scientific research opportunities, or even economic ones like ecotourism, if that were ever developed, are lost to local communities and institutions.
That's a really important point. It's not just about the ants themselves, but about who benefits from and who controls a nation's natural heritage, even the creepy crawly parts of it.
Exactly. It challenges our usual perspective on what parts of nature hold value, doesn't it? We focus on the big, the furry, the majestic.
And overlook the crucial functions of the small and seemingly insignificant. So this term they used, wildlife piracy, it really frames it as theft of national assets.
I think that's precisely the message they want to send. The Kenya Wildlife Service called these arrests a landmark case. They're hoping it acts as a serious deterrent.
A warning shot, essentially, to anyone thinking of getting into the exotic ant trade.
Pretty much. It's a fascinating, if slightly disturbing, look at how the illegal wildlife trade is evolving. Demand for the exotic, even in its tiniest forms, can create these unexpected pressures.
It really makes you think. What other creatures, what other parts of the natural world that we barely notice might be facing similar threats just beneath the surface?
It does. It's a complex picture, this whole biodiversity protection issue. It forces you to consider the value we place, maybe arbitrarily, on different living things and what the real cost of losing them might be. Something to mull over, definitely. vpod.ai, your source for the latest information. This podcast is sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, hyperconversion, VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com or email your project requirements to sales@stonefly.com.